First time I met Elizabeth Edwards through the usually antiseptic process of a satellite interview, she told me, apparently with some hesitation, the story of how the inevitable distance of the teen years had separated her from her late son Wade. But she said almost by accident they'd begun to watch the same television show each night, and soon it became appointment viewing for the two of them, and then it became the means by which they bonded anew. And just as I began to wonder why on earth she was telling me this story, she explained that this had been in the mid-1990s, and the show was ESPN's Sports Center with Dan Patrick and Keith Olbermann, and she just wanted to thank me and let me know how happy it made her to see me on television, because it always reminded her of her son. And in our third story, if that perspective and the desire to share its meaning with an outsider like me does not tell you just how remarkable a person we lost when Elizabeth Edwards died at 10:15 this morning, nothing ever could. The world first got to know her 6 years ago as a force of nature on the campaign trail. Outspoken, intelligent, empathetic, real. She was the anti-political spouse, a tireless surrogate for the Democratic ticket. Her husband, Senator John Edwards, the vice presidential nominee. She first learned she had a tumor in her breast on Election Day of 2004, the Kerry Edwards campaign conceding shortly thereafter. Radiation and chemo put the cancer in remission, but after her husband announced he would run for president again, the cancer had returned. Through it all, she remained positive and upbeat, even testifying to Congress about the need for better health care. Just yesterday, she had announced she was ending the treatment after doctors told her further therapy would be unproductive. This morning, she died in her Chapel Hill, North Carolina home, husband and children by her side. The Edwards family releasing a statement that read in part, "Today we have lost the comfort of Elizabeth's presence, but she remains the heart of this family. We love her and will never know anyone more inspiring or full of life." One of my last conversations with her was to discuss her book, Resilience. It was a chronicle of all she had endured, from the death of her teenage son to her cancer diagnosis to her husband's infidelity. She dealt with it all with incredible grace and dignity. So I want to read one passage from this. "Each time I fell into a chasm, my son's death or a tumor in my breast or an unwelcome woman in my life, I had to accept that the planet had taken a few turns and I could not turn it back. My life was and would always be different, and it would be less than I hoped it would be. We all tumble and fall. I certainly have, but in truth it is going to happen in some degree to all of us." Is acceptance of the plan B, whatever it is in a particular situation, one of the keys to getting up again, after that tumble?
I think that it is. I mean, you can go through the motions, and we all do. The day after something terrible happens, we do get up and we do whatever it is we need to do. If you have cancer and you need to work, you get up and go to work, but that doesn't mean you have really come to accept this new reality. You start to be more productive, and you don't live with eternal discontent. The day you say, now my life is different, and these are the new parameters of my life. And I have every time I've resisted, and every time I've come to the same place.
Joined now by Karen Finney, Democratic strategist and friend of Elizabeth Edwards, and thanks for coming in under such circumstances.
Good to be with you.
I hesitated in telling that Sports Center story because it sounds flatly self-serving in that way. It was sort of been about Entertainment Tonight and Mary Hart for all that matters. Yeah. The amazing part was the joy that she drew from what most of the rest of us would have been just not mortified by, but reminded of unhappy things. How many people do that, and how much did she do that in her life?
She did that a lot. At the time when I got to know her in 2004, she had really made peace with, she would always say, I have 4 children. And that was part of the way she felt like she wanted to deal with the loss of Wade. Yeah. And one thing about that interview that was really neat, we kind of rushed in, she sat down in the chair, and there was, a little bit of back and forth, and she looked over and she said, she had this moment, and she said, Wade would have gotten such a kick out of this. And she said, should I say that? And I said, I think that's fine. That's because she was the kind of person who found joy and hope in things that most of us don't pay attention to. In her books, she talks about that, right? She talks about, it's the people that she met on the rope lines. It's the friends and the family, which I'm so glad that she was able to be home with friends and family. That's where she drew her strength. And, she was an amazing woman. She was also a hoot. She had a great sense of humor. I would not want to play her in Boggle because she was the best Boggle player you ever could find, having been a literature major. She was just an incredible woman.
She was anti-war. She supported marriage equality. She was as strong a healthcare advocate as we had in this country. And as you point out, her intellect was startling. No matter how much you thought you'd seen of it, you realized she was just barely warming up. I used to joke about this, but quite seriously, why did she not run for office? Why did she not run for president?
You know, she didn't see that as her role. I mean, you know, it's interesting. You know, women always, you know, we struggle with our lives and how we balance it all. You know, she had this great career as a lawyer in her own right, and then made the decision to be at home and raise Wade and Kate. And then, you know, 2 presidential campaigns and Jack and Emma Claire and being a healthcare advocate. And, you know, one of the things about her is, even though she didn't run for public office, she still wanted to make sure that her time on earth was meaningful and that she gave. And one of the things we were talking about today in our little group that's been kind of dealing with this, that she felt like in the end she won. Because to her, you know, it's not that you lose a battle with cancer, it's that you know, you find meaning and you go on the next day, as she was talking about in that interview with you, and you keep going with your life, and that's how you win.
The outpouring of affection for her, which preceded the later events, the unhappier events, it wasn't a function of that. Might have gotten magnified, but it wasn't a function of that. Did she get a sense of how loved she was in this country for somebody who, you know, was an unusual, an atypical public figure?
You know, not really. I mean, she's such a modest person.
Yeah.
You know, if you watch interviews, she would always say, well, you know, I'm just a person, or and you know, we would always say, no, 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 you're gonna, you know, you're more than that. She didn't think of herself that way, and I think that's part of what people connected with, is that she just saw herself as a person. You know, one of the things I really respect, if you read her books, she talks about how, look, we're all people. You know, we have good days and bad days, and we're not perfect, and to accept that that's what love is about. And she embraced that, and again, just loved talking to people.
And it's such a strange thing to talk about, but I encountered this with the decisions that were made with my dad to stop treatment. Literally the day that we did this, he lasted 35 minutes and then he was just out, nice as you please. And everyone had heard this story yesterday and felt very bad about it, deciding that that gone far enough, and it was over a day later.
Yeah.
I don't want to it's not like it's planned that way, but a knowledge of herself and how long to fight and when to say enough was clearly evident at the end even.
Absolutely. You know, I was with her when she first found out that she had cancer, when she first found the lump and then determined it was cancer. And just like Elizabeth, she was like, okay, we're going to deal with this. And I think, you know, she dealt with the physical piece in terms of the treatment that she needed, but also dealt with coming to terms with, there's going to be an end point, and my end point may come sooner, and I've got to prepare my family for that. And as you say, you know, you don't know when that's going to come, when people go off those medications, because it could be hours, it could be, but she was comfortable and she was happy, and that's what, you know, that's all you could want for someone in a time like that.
And everybody around her comfortable and as happy as they could be under the circumstances?
As happy as they could be, and just, you know, grateful for the time. Grateful, you know, to have been a part of her life and to have had the experience. I mean, that's how I feel. So grateful to have known her and to have, you know, traveled on a little plane with her all over the country. You know, she used to make us sing songs out of a songbook. And I mean, she's the only person I've ever seen make a Secret Service agent sing a song. I mean, you know, she was an incredible woman.
Hoot is a great word. Karen Finney, and a respectful one in this case, too.
Absolutely.
Karen Finney, a friend of Elizabeth Edwards and acting as a spokesperson for the family in the last few days. Great thanks and my condolences.
Thanks, Keith.
Back with a comment on this tax cut deal.